after 3 years, I still can't live that weight much.
All right, thanks everyone for coming this evening. We'll go ahead and get started, and we will begin with roll call.
Oops. Ron Keller.
Here.
Sue Wilson.
Here.
Todd Taylor. Here. Lori Abernathy. Here. Ken Bresna.
Here,
Quorum.
All right, and we will not be having a closed session this evening. We'll postpone that until all of our board members can be in attendance. We will be looking at it, since our auxiliary building site selection is an item for discussion here this evening. We have the Indianola Little League members. Okay, if you guys want to come on out.
Yeah, why don't you slide a chair up if you don't mind?
We'll invite you guys up.
Just go
And
right.
then I'll introduce everyone here on the board for you. So I'm Rob Keller, the board president. And then we have Sue Wilson, a board member, Donna Kramer, a board member, Lori Abernathy, and Ken Bresnan, also board members. And then we have our administrative team here. We have Mimi Kelly, she is over HR, Annette Duran over curriculum. Jonna Clancy is our board secretary, and Bernie, he's over our facilities. And then right here we have Mr. Art Sato, our superintendent.
I'm Martin Dirks, I'm the treasurer for
Martin.
Indianola Little League.
Great, okay.
Bob Dyer, Vice President.
Okay, great. And I might just, for public awareness too, just give a little context and mention where we're at and what we're here to discuss. We had a site survey where they looked at different sites the architect did for a proposed auxiliary services building. And then Indianola Little League has a lease with the school district. And I want to apologize, first of all, for not being aware of that initially, at least, or we definitely, as a district, would have communicated sooner and differently than we did. So we had been through a situation when I first came here, when we were doing buildings for the stadium and working in that track area. And we're working with Soccer Tribe on field locations and adding a field out here, and it worked through it, but wasn't aware of the lease at that time. They didn't bring it up. So I apologize for that ignorance, first of all. So the main question tonight, I think, from the district perspective is if the district can do something for Little League beyond the parking lot that's been built or water for irrigation or the lease where you have the site, because the proposed site would impact that northernmost field that's a little less developed, and you guys can definitely speak to how things are used. My understanding is the site that came back from the architect is the field that doesn't have lights and that is rented to senior league, maybe used for some tournaments, not used as much for games, which I think factored into their recommendation probably. I know that it'd be very difficult for the district to try to go find suitable ground somewhere else additionally and purchase it, and would definitely delay that project. So we're hoping there's something we can do to add value for Little League and potentially find something there in the south like we talked about. So I think everybody's just interested to hear Little League perspective on it. We haven't had an opportunity to sit down and talk through it yet, so I really appreciate you being here tonight.
As far as usage, we use it for our senior league fields. We also host USSSA tournaments quite a few weekends of the year. I think we're up to 6 or 7 right now this year, and still have almost every month for the rest of this month. Plus we're hosting state USSSA state tournament will be held out there this year, which will bring in families from all over Iowa. Plus we have a men's league. They have 2 different leagues in central Iowa that use our fields as well. So depending on, a lot of the times if they're running later games, because a lot of those guys are coaches and members of the community, we actually run a lot more Little League things on that field without lights, just because we can host games earlier. so.
Yeah, I think the current lease was opened up in 1997, but it's a
Right.
40-year lease and it goes out to 2037.
Correct.
And we really weren't planning on releasing that lease at this time. We hadn't had any conversation with you all about other alternatives that might be available.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, that conversation early on would have been different, you know. Again, I just wasn't aware that we'd been, that the district had been obligated, you know, for 40 years, $1 a year, and since have read the lease, so that's where it was very important to get you to the table and talk about it. And is there some other way that we can, is there some way we can benefit Little League, make the space we have more usable for you, develop, there's kind of 2 fields there that are separate from the other 4, right, that are used a lot for Little League purposes?
The 2 fields closest to the parking lot, they're just bigger fields, and so they're
Okay.
set up for older age group
Gotcha.
kids. The 4 up by the main compound are for, kids up to, say, 13 years old or so. So they're smaller fields. The fields down here are much bigger.
Mhm.
They'd be high school-sized baseball fields, basically.
Okay.
If I may, for the purpose of discussion, when the land was purchased, back the same time the middle school was, and I think it was July '94, the land was actually purchased, the community was coming together, realizing that Little League needed some help, because there was no way they were going to be able to get the land. And as the proposal was made to the school district, it would benefit the Little League, players and all that, and their numbers. And that was great, because that was in the spirit of what the school district's always been doing. I don't know if you're aware, but when they raised the money for the street gymnasium, a lot of money was raised, but it wasn't enough to buy land and do everything. So we were able, as a school district, to say, well, here, just build it here. We can share things. We've already got, the land, we've got the furnaces, we've got whatever it is, we've got that taken care of. And the community has always come together in different things to respond to different needs over different years. It was a school district in the city and Simpson that kind of came together so this whole Y thing could happen, which is a benefit to the community. And the reason why I say that is, I do know since I was here that the idea was to help Little League, not to make it a profit center for Little League to rent out to other people. So I'm having a little trouble with that. This doesn't seem to be affecting Little League. But please do,
Yeah,
yeah.
I can talk to that. So Little League's a not-for-profit organization, so we're not, we're a fully volunteer operated board. We don't have really many paid employees other than for maintenance of the facility and for some part-time work during concession stands and tournaments. We use the tournament revenue on the weekends to help support our Little League program during the year. And so maintenance of the fields, lights, utilities, those type of things. We're basically a break-even organization. We're not out here making money off of the school district's ground. All of the money that we make from Little League goes back and reinvested in maintaining the fields, doing things like putting up the lights out there. That was a $97,000 project through our registrations, the tournaments on the weekends, those type of things. So we're a total volunteer organization.
There's no question about that. Okay, I'm not questioning it. Do you have the ability to host tournaments if you had that one less field?
It would hurt our ability to host tournaments because we'd be down to one field of the older kids' side. So basically 14U, I think, and up would be playing on those larger fields. And we can use it for smaller, for younger kids as well. But it's largely.
But you could still have some tournaments if you didn't have that. What that?
We could have.
Are there enough tournaments? I mean, I
It would
don't know.
agree.
I see.
It would greatly impact our field rental itself is not a huge thing, mainly concessions. I'm sure you guys know that from football and everything else. A lot of our revenues helps with concessions and the people coming in to visit. The actual teams playing in that, we don't gain a whole lot of money. Usually by the time we pay the field crews that work the tournaments, it's usually a break-even point. So a lot of the money that we get to put back into the fields and get into the facilities comes from concessions revenue. So that's 50, we usually run, six games a day, times you have 20 kids, 40 parents, grandparents. That's a lot just in one field of people coming through there, so.
So what do you think your cost of those tournaments, your income from those tournaments would be? Trying to figure out if there's some way we can come to,
Sorry, we don't have the numbers available to you. We weren't really sure what the context of our conversation was gonna be.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine.
It's probably, what, we get $50-ish a game.
Yep.
We have 8 to 12 games on the field per weekend. We have about 13, maybe weekends of summer, 14 that we have tournaments.
I can tell you, I ran the concession stand for 10 years out there.
You're very,
And so I know, it's, a lot of times when we were said and done, there wasn't much left for Little League after they paid the umps and, if there was rain delays, everybody was out there trying to get the fields dry. And so just from what the money I made in the concession stand for them, they had to help pay and everything else, so. That was for
We can
pre-COVID.
definitely come back to you with some more solid numbers on what.
Yeah, that's fine. Because I know there's concessions and I know there is. The point is, I have a rough idea where you're at. Just to stop everything doesn't help. If the reason for the tournaments is income, then my question that I'll ask the rest of the board, once we have some idea, is, can we do that? Can we help replace that? Because the spirit of the lease was not to raise money, but I know you're using it for a good cause.
Correct.
You know what I
We're
mean?
not,
to debate that in the least.
yeah, correct, we're still non-for-profit.
I haven't seen you guys driving Cadillacs here or anything.
Or if you've ever been out to our shed, equipment shed out there, you'll see the numbers. That's the other.
We're usually pretty dirty out there by the end of a weekend, covered in dust, and, it's long, hard weekends that none of the board members, we pay the same amount for our boys to play baseball and everybody else does.
Sure, yeah, I know how it goes. Yeah. As long as we can keep having a discussion, I'm happy,
We'd like to continue to be able to provide Little League services to the community. I think there's between 320-ish and 500 kids any given summer, sign up. So having these other programs like tournaments on the weekends really helps us fund those.
Is there an option to use our high school field if we take their field? I'm just throwing that up.
That'd be a conversation we had.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Of everything, that's a lot of weekend stuff.
And under the original lease agreement, part of those fields, the agreement with the Little League being in with that and building that field to that scale was trying to accommodate, if you read through that lease, was a partnership with the school district and Little League. And if games needed to be during the day for the high school, middle school, them using those big fields for that reason, nobody's ever came and asked us to use those, but we're still open to that as well.
Yeah, I know the
if your
lease
school
says that we're
needs
supposed to have an annual scheduling conversation. I don't think that hasn't been happening. The lease talks about the building of parking and that won't all fall on Little League. Well, the district took care of that. We've got a nice parking lot there now, so I don't want to say that the lease obviously matters and it's in place, as you said, 4 years till 2037. But hopefully, as things come up, we can work together too. And I'm totally with Mr. Bresnan. I don't want to do anything to hurt our local kids' opportunity. And if we're fundraising to put money back into the Little League, and there's some other way the district can help do some of that same thing, if that fundraising was impacted. So I think tonight we just wanted to get a feel for, is there an opportunity to keep, to look at some numbers, keep talking, see if we can figure something out. Because if we can't, then it's a radically different route to go. That definitely wouldn't be advantageous for the district or district taxpayers if we suddenly have to look for another piece of suitable ground and try to buy it, so. So I think that's maybe, one thing on my mind is just can you guys take a look, can we keep talking and see if there's something that can be done?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely up for discussion.
We can take it back to our board as well. I mean, I'd like to mention too, I think we've been pretty good neighbor partners for the school district. You know, the shot put area that you guys built out there is actually on this leased area ground that we're talking about. That's part of that compound. And so we've not disagreed with decisions that don't impact the ability to play baseball out in the fields. But when we start talking about removing entire fields and that type of thing, it's something we'd like to have a broader discussion about, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yep, I understand that. Okay. So this may be as far as we get tonight, just to kind of explain context and ask if we can talk more and you guys can get together with your board we've got people, Bernie and I will be here all summer and we can sit down anytime or answer any questions from a district perspective that you have, and so.
Other than, say, registration numbers from us and information about the number of games, potential things like that, what information do you all need from the Little League board
Well, I was
when we come back?
kind of looking for what you're getting off the field rentals, what your net is, your rent money, less your expenses, and your concessions might,
Yeah, I think.
not the revenue of concession stand, because we know you have to buy the stuff, do all of that.
So you want, like, if they raise 50,000 for Little League, you wanna know what that number is
That's,
per year, right?
Yeah, and I know it's skyrocketed, but, then we can have something to work with, so we might be able to make.
I guess the other question that I guess I would have, I knew last time you wanted to come to the board to have a discussion. Is it something you still want to come to a board meeting, or is it something we can sit down at just get together with your board, 3 of us, 2 of us, or whatever, just have a conversation and come back?
I don't know that we necessarily need to be at the school board meeting and do it. I mean, as long as it works out for.
I think at some point, we probably need to get to that point, but just have some conversation.
be a lot more flexible, just because we're only scheduled for one July meeting, and I don't know how that syncs up with your schedules, and.
No, I think that's perfectly fine with us. We just didn't know, kind of the situation where we kind of heard a third party was kind of, I know Justin just kind of wanted to have it on record.
Yeah.
It's here, and that way everybody knows that here's what's going on. Any further discussions, I think is fine. Whatever works for people and outside. So.
Okay, that's great. I appreciate you being here and talking through it, and I know you've got Bernie's contact information. I'm not too hard to find either, so once you guys have an opportunity to talk a little bit and it's time to get together, we'll be happy to.
Sounds good.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, next we will move into the good news.
Yep.
Mr. Savage.
Okay, we'll jump back up to the top here, and I'll speak quickly because we've got people who want to speak, I think, here too. And the good news, there were a lot of different things in there, and Mimi can just kind of scroll through. We had Special Olympics here mid-May, which was nice to be able to have. We had the Middle School Distinguished Achievement Awards. That was also May 13th. Very good contingent, boys and girls up at state track with some good successes. There was a link there to view the senior awards this year. We were able to have our Dollars for Scholars and awards night. There was also a little retrospective, 100 Years of Band at Indianola High School there. It was kind of interesting. We had a young man qualify for a youth exchange program. That's mentioned in there. There was just an academic activity that was kind of neat that our librarian and one of our history teachers collaborated on, and that was, they did an escape room concept, but it was around the Cold War. That was kind of a neat thing. Our 8th grade play was honored at the Iowa Motion Picture Awards. That's in there. One of our elementary teachers won a grant for a reading support program for kids. That was in there. We had some pictures from a culture day the middle school had the end of May. We had some pictures of the high school Pride of Indianola at the Memorial Day Parade. And then finally, the last ones that Mimi's scrolling through now, we had some middle school awards that we shared from one of our groups. So a lot of year-end things. Summer sports are off to a good start too. Baseball team, softball team are having success and doing good things. So lots going on.
Thanks, Mr. Stowe. Anything else from any other board members? Okay. Tonight we have, let's see, Kim Gibson here to speak, and Casey, and Amy, and then, are you speaking, ma'am? Okay.
So I'm Deb.
What's your name?
I'm Deb.
Deb, okay.
Do you want to just go by the order on the list
Yeah.
there, Jonna?
Deb Larson, Deb Larson.
I have a copy of what I'm going to share with you. I'll share it with you. And then after the meeting, I'll go ahead and email it to everyone so you won't have to.
And if you don't mind,
Oh, sure.
then this mic should be live and they'll be able to hear you on the recording.
Yeah. So I'm here this evening and thank you for this opportunity. I'm Deb Larson in Union, Iowa. I have 4 issues to review with you briefly about the Indianola Indians concern that we have. Issue number 1 is the Iowa Commission on Native American Affairs. And what I've shared with Joanna and what I've brought tonight are 2 letters from that organization that they asked me to bring. And I want to share with you that if you would communicate directly with them, I wouldn't be doing this. I'm bringing them simply because I'm the intermediator there. But the first letter is dated October 2011. That's the letter that they wrote when I was up there testifying before them regarding the Indianola Indians, so that's a while ago. They also shared a current letter, October 2020, which is their current position on the removal of the Indians. Please, I would ask that those letters be included as public communication part of the record for the meeting tonight. Second issue I'd like to share with you is the Native American Guardian Association, NAGA. We're requesting that by the end of this month, by the end of June, that the school district upload documents associated with the conversations with NAGA, the information that was shared with NAGA for their review of the Indianola Indians. And that would include but not be limited to the recommendations that they made and the memorandum of understanding that we understand was offered. So we feel it's very important for the community to be able to review that information as well. And with public access, we could all do that, no matter how anyone feels about how you proceed. Issue number 3 is the Sac and Fox Tribe of the Mississippi in Iowa, the Meskwaki Nation. We're also requesting that before the end of June, that the school board reach out to the Meskwaki Nation and ask for the same review that you did for NAGA. So in other words, we're asking for a balanced effort in obtaining information about different perspectives on the Indianola Indians and whether or not that should be kept at the school district. My information for Joanna includes contact information for both the Iowa Commission on Native American Affairs and also the Meskwaki Nation, so you would have to look up who to talk to or who to call. So the last thing that I'd like to share with you this evening is my response to President Keller's email to me about the end of May. I wanted to come and talk with you personally because it's a lot easier than just texting and emailing back and forth. And for background, he shared that email with everyone, but for background, I'll read it briefly so that everyone has the context. It's quote, "On behalf of the board, thank you for reaching out, Deb. We understand this is a topic of concern for some, but we're not currently planning to entertain any board action. We're discussing possible means of seeking community input while we continue to ensure respectful use of Indian's name and the Dreamcatcher logo. Sincerely, Rob Keller." That's the end of the quote. So, as a gray-haired Caucasian woman, I don't have a lot of credibility when it comes to talking about minority concerns and issues, but I'm the mother of a multiracial family. And since we live in the Indianola School District, and our kids grew up here, I had a lot of practice doing it, and they've taught me a lot. And I probably started back in 2002. I was working on the Indianola Indians. Our family was volunteering for the White Eagle Multicultural Powwow up in Des Moines, which were the yellow handprints on their sacred hoop that they called it, bringing people together, different races together. At that time, I thought it would help to bring my friends from the powwow to the Indianola School District, and we could talk together face to face about the concerns that they had, and I could do a better job on myself. I really thought, you know, when you bring someone you care about to share something that hurts, I think I just assumed that the meeting would be very compassionate and that people would want to know why, you know, the Indianola Indians is an issue. Instead, well, we met with a couple school board members, the superintendent at that time, staff, and instead, what they faced was disbelief. The school district tried to talk them out of how they felt and what they'd experienced. I was blown away, frankly. The two things that I remember about that meeting were the two questions that they were asked. School district staff asked my friends, how many people are hurt by the Indianola Indians, really? And how much does it hurt, really? And they couldn't answer, really. One of the things, President Keller, that you stated to me was, you know, we understand this is a topic of concern for some. And that's the first thing I thought of when I read that was, are we still quantifying some people? Are we still trying to measure hurt? Because I really hope that after that long, that's not the case. One of the other things that you shared was we continue to ensure respectful use of the Indians' name and Dreamcatcher logo. And my response to that is that the Indianola School District hasn't been able to ensure respectful use of that in the past or at the present time. And I think one thing we can agree together is that behavior of fans, Indianola Indians fans, is something that, especially with adults, you can't control. I mean, there's some things you can do and some things you can't. And I know the Indianola School District has received complaints about the disrespectful use of Native American religious items, too. Maybe it would help if we think about the history of the Indianola Indians in parallel with Native American history. In the early 1900s, that was the same time the Warren County Historical Society reports the beginning of the Indianola Indians. There were thousands of Native children being forcibly taken from their families by the U.S. and Canadian governments. That was the goal of taking the Indian out of the Indian or killing the Indian. Those American Indian boarding schools are in the news now again because they're starting to talk about unmarked graves and mass graves of children who died in those boarding schools. And they're trying to find families after all this time. Native Americans talk about that as the lost generation. Native Americans born in the United States didn't have full citizenship until 1924. They had to wait for the Voting Rights Act of 1965, so they couldn't vote. And the American Indian Religious Freedom Act of 1978. During all that time, we were playing at being Indians in Indianola and cheering Go Indians at sports. It makes me feel uncomfortable to think about it, and I hope it does you too. When I hear people say educate, not eradicate, who are we kidding? Native Americans never asked Indianola to tell their story, and we aren't getting it right anyway. So the really emotional part for me about all this is that ensuring respectful use is also not correct for other minorities in the Indianola School District. And now we go back to the fact that I have a multiracial family. I'll give you one example. Because you see, when you think about one race, the Native Americans, in a way that you think you know who they are and their identity, it squishes out not only with adults, but with kids. It squishes out where we make assumptions about other people that aren't correct. So here's an example. In 2013, Indianola High School produced the musical South Pacific, and our daughter was one of the actors. Our Asian American daughter was one of the actors. Students were told to darken their skin as part of the costume, and we got it in writing. As our daughter came home night after night from theater practice, we went from meetings with school staff to school administration. We couldn't find anyone in the Indianola School District who was willing to stop it. We knew that darkening skin is called blackface when the race is African American, but in Indianola, what's it called when the race is Asian American? Is it brown face? I mean, when our daughter came home, it looked like dirty face. Please think about how we felt as parents, sitting in the Indianola High School auditorium watching our daughter and her Caucasian classmates with darkened skin. The Indianola School District failed to protect her and failed to correct something that could have been a valuable learning experience for everyone. Instead, our daughter wasn't Asian enough for Indianola, and the damage was done. In Indianola, we have so little knowledge about what it means to be a minority, what it feels like to be a minority. And there's a price to pay, too, for us. Our son said, "Mom, when you talk about this, it goes badly for us." And it went badly for me, too. I'm thinking that sometimes you get emails that are threatening or you have name calling, and it happens to us, too. Dr. Sadoff, members of the board, it's critically important for you to understand that when you waive your own policies and guidelines to use the Indianola Indians, you create an environment that is not safe or nurturing for all of us, for other minorities too. I feel this is not acceptable. So in closing, I wanted to share with you the Indianola Independent Advocate reported this after your work session in April. So I'm reading from them, I'm not verifying with you, and that's why I'm sharing it publicly here, to make sure it's correct. This is a quote, "A discussion over the use of the Indians' nickname surfaced last year, but a group of citizens who favored changing it delayed bringing the topic forward while the district wrestled with the pandemic and returned to learn plans. I think we're all very thankful for their graciousness," said Keller in a memo to the school board, but he added, "I'm assuming this issue will come before us soon." I'm one of those people who waited. I'm one of the people who worked with the city last summer and we waited. We were concerned about all the time you were spending with the pandemic and return to learn and everything. The timing was wrong. We trusted you and we respected this process. We waited through the whole school year, but while we were waiting, we didn't expect you to try and hopscotch over us, which is how this feels. To assume an outcome with the Indianola Indians, or to try and delay public discussion any longer. It feels like an odd way to be thankful for our graciousness to do that. And we're wondering, were we wrong to trust you when we waited? So at this point, we feel like, since you're already working on the Indianola Indians now, or did, it's obvious that you have time and that it's appropriate to come back. You don't have to look for input, it's all around you. We've worked on it all last summer with a public Facebook page. We would encourage all points of view in the public discussion. But the point we feel that's most important is that we need to know where the Indianola School Board's priorities are now before the new 2021-2022 school year starts this fall. So respectfully, this letter is our second written request for public discussion and an action item on your meeting agenda in July 19th, on the matter of permanent removal of the Indianola Indians. So please include my letter tonight as part of your meeting record. And as I said, I'll email it to all of you. You'll have my contact information if there's anything that you need. We're really looking forward to working with you in July. So thank you for sharing your time tonight and letting me speak. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Kim. No, sorry, Gianna has the list. Casey.
Amy wants to go first.
Okay,
I'm letting Amy go. All about working together here.
I know I've been here a few times before. I don't really have a speech. I just came I'm super good at like one-on-ones or like in a meeting, communicating together. I'm not really good at this, like, I'm gonna talk to all of you and you're gonna listen to me. I really like to have some feedback. But, so I am a part of SIAC, and that's been a really, really neat experience for me to meet other parents and to see where their point of view is on school. We've talked about different things in there, random, but one thing is trade school that I think that we probably as a community, as a district, need to do a better job of teaching kids that there is more than college as an outcome. But mostly I'm here because of the crazy year that we've had, and congratulations, we did make it. I'm like, I never thought we were going to go through this year, but here we are in midsummer, so that's exciting. SIAC was one way that I was able to communicate and get to know some other parents. And I've said this before, I'm a cosmetologist, and so I get to hear a lot of feedback from parents one-on-one, which is why I probably prefer sitting down having meetings with people. But I realized that we have a big communication problem from student to teacher, from teacher to teacher, from admin to teacher, and from admin to then admin, you know. I have also discovered that students, when they have issues with teachers, don't feel comfortable, don't feel safe with either telling their parents, and if they have told their parents and they're telling their parents, don't say anything to that teacher because I'm afraid that something will then happen to me, things are going to be worse for me. I can tell you that I actually had this situation with my daughter, and I did reach out to the principal first, and she, of course, said, you know, why don't you reach out to that teacher? And I did, and things did get better for her, but I've heard the opposite happen for a lot of students. Not a lot. Like, this doesn't happen all the time. We have amazing teachers in this district. The majority of them are. One over there who's leaving, which is sad, but, sorry. Okay, what am I talking about? Another thing that I did get to talk to Mrs. Rixner about, there was a dress code issue, and I mentioned to her about what the issue was. She was aware of it. And teachers, the whole entire day, no teachers asked the student to change, and it was a really bad situation. So dress code isn't getting upholded. But I've also had teachers tell me that they've sent students to the principal's office and they just come right back. So, like I said, the communication is really something big. And I did mention to Rixner that if there was a dress code shift, then I think it would be a really good idea if parents were included in that, because there are children. And I did have a conversation with my daughter about it, and she said that I don't think it would be a bad thing, you know, if it was maybe loosened a little bit, but I don't think that we can just give them anything, because it's still going to be a problem. It is a problem now, and it will continue to be a problem, and maybe it will be a worse problem if we loosen it too much. So I have talked with some moms and a couple dads about trying to make a parent group, and I mentioned that at the SIAC meetings. I kind of wrote it, you know, I didn't make it like an official announcement or anything to you, but I have 17 parents who are interested in some sort of, at middle school and high school level, we found something called Parents for Public Schools. I don't know if that's the direction we will go, but I think that it would be a really good time to kind of put something in place like that. I don't know. We have ideas. I don't need to share them all right now, but I do think that it's a good thing to have a conversation with you people. because there's a lot of parents that are concerned about certain things that have gone on. And if you guys don't know the situation that I'm talking about, I would ask you that you reach out to the principals and find out, because there's some pretty delicate things that have happened, and it's kind of messy. And I don't know if you want me to go into it. I'm not going to go into it, but I only know personally some stories, and I've heard some other stories, but there's a lot of political things, obviously, that have gone on in classrooms, and I don't know if that's obvious or not, but to me it is, because I've had all of these conversations with all of these parents. Yeah, so communication is really big, and maybe I can go into this a little bit. When my son started high school, it was kind of like, okay, we got this. You parents now need to back off. They need to become adults. We're gonna help them do that. And I was kind of like, okay, so I didn't feel like I really need to be involved in anything. But after talking to these parents, and even with SIAC, how do we better prepare our children for life after high school? We've discovered that maybe parents do need to be involved more, because there's things that we are missing, and public school can't hit everything. We can't expect our teachers to just, you forgot that part. Why didn't you do that? It was a really hard balance for me, and it still is, but I'm getting better now. I have the second one going to high school next year. And I just really think that parents should be involved more. I think it's really good for the students to see parents involved. What else was I going to say? I was going to say one more thing, but now I can't remember. I did look through, so I looked online to see what you guys were doing tonight, and I saw in the teacher handbook, and the first thing on there, I think I took a screenshot of it, was students always come first. And I think this year, it's been really heavy for students, and so it's been hard for teachers to really put students first to that level. But I think that we've kind of almost lost, these are human beings, I'm a super big mama bear, and I want to talk about feelings with my kids and make sure that mental health is even, and this year has been hard for them, but we do all of these things by the book. You need to do this, and nobody's really ever checking in on them. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm going to mention Casey over here, and she is one of our teachers that really was able to connect with kids, and I think communication was one thing that made us lose her. And I just want to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. And maybe even vice versa, if there's a teacher that's really causing harm to students, or throwing them through this mental, who am I? What am I doing? I think students need to be put first, like it does say in the handbook, and whatever that means for them, not just educationally. We're raising our children to be human, to be respectable adults. And I think that to create some sort of a safe environment for them to go to an adult and not have any repercussions come from it would be vital. Would be a really neat thing to offer them. All right, that's what I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right. After speaking with a couple of you, I'd asked to bring some information so you would have it as well. And then I'm going to walk through this with you. So I did bring a handout for each board member. Most of you know who I am. You've met me. My name's Casey Brown. I am the ag teacher here for another 16 days, and then have chose to move on. I did put a little slide there at the beginning to give you a little bit of background of who I am and what I've done as an ag teacher for the last 11 years. The bottom two I still currently am doing. I'm very passionate about taking care of teachers and take care of the Health and Wellness Committee for ag teachers in the state of Iowa. And I'm currently serving as the state board of directors. So I am very involved in my career. I'm very involved in the different teachers, but most importantly, I'm coming to share with you information about what CTE is, what the ag program is, what some of the different numbers look like, and what I hope you can see the future to look like moving forward. So the first slide down there, it talks about career and tech education, and at Indianola we offer ag, business, industrial tech, and family consumer sciences. At the state level, you're required to have 4 of those areas in a school district, so we are meeting that. There are CTSOs, or student organizations, within each one of those, and FFA would be the one that I am running. We do have DECA, FCCLA, and I believe we've approved Skills USA moving forward for the New Woods program. And then finally, experiential learning and work-based learning is a big piece that everyone is talking about right now. And from the ag program, that comes from an SAE project. So there on the bottom right of that picture, I've got instruction, SAE, and FFA as the 3-circle model. And anybody involved in the ag ed world would tell you the 3-circle model is what an ag ed program is founded upon. It's what builds on. You need a balance in all 3 of those. So I'm going to walk through each one of those and give you just a little bit of information about what Indianola's looks like currently. So our first one, the SAE program, or work-based learning, as the token state phrase that we want to hear from right now. So I pulled 2019, 2020 numbers. Those were the easiest for me to have wrapped up, as I don't have all of this year's record books done because it was a crazy year. 171 projects were logged, and we had 5,112 logged hours in a placement project. So what does a placement project mean? It means those students work somewhere. They may work for another farmer, they may work at Hy-Vee, they may work for a restaurant here in town, but that's a placement project. And then we also have what's called an entrepreneurship project, where that student owns their own business. They may own a turf grass management business and mow your lawns for you. They may own a cattle breeding business. There's a wide variety of those businesses that we have students taking place in right now. That's work-based learning. That is the key phrase that we're doing, and the ag program is doing that and has been doing that. So we have a $204,000 economic impact from high school students from their projects. So they're not just every Saturday morning couple-hour project. These are real projects that these kids are investing their money in and working towards. So then I'm going to share with you, for this year, for the 2020-21 school year, I reported 80 students to the state system as a work-based learning student. And the reason I want to share that with you is at the high school, we have a part-time business teacher who is also a part-time work-based learning coordinator who is doing work-based learning, which your ag teacher is already doing, and your ag teacher will continue to do. That's part of an ag program, is to do those work-based learning programs. And so I just want to point out to the board that I completely value the work-based program that Mrs. Busby is putting into the high school, but I also want to make sure that somebody is aware that the ag teacher is already doing that with several of those students, and it's not something that we can hand off to her to do. An SAE project is supervised by your ag teacher per national code. The next page is briefly just about our FFA chapter. You know about us, you've seen us. We currently have over 140 members. Throughout the school year, I trained over 30 teams. This year, I did put on there, I wanted to point out that we had 2 Stars Over Iowa. The Stars Over Iowa program I know was shared with you in the good news, but the Stars Over Iowa is a significant, huge program. And the reason I wanted to bring it up to you tonight was that program selects the top 6 students in an area in the state, and we had 2 of them in the 2 areas. And as I stood backstage with Mr. Sadoff, Mr. Sebersba, the parents of those students and that student, I noticed I was the only teacher standing back there that had multiple star finalists with a single teacher department. The rest of them that had multiple finalists had 2 or 3 instructors. And that was a pat on my back that I got them there. But it's also something that took a lot of time and effort. We have 1,100 community service hours logged from FFA members throughout the year. And then one thing that I always do like to point out is the dollars that are ag-based for graduates. And so I went back and that was a number that I could calculate. The FFA advisor versus assistant advisor, a lot of people ask me the difference of this. In the Iowa FFA Constitution, it simply states the teachers of ag education are the FFA advisors, the teacher or teachers, not a community member that you hire to be an assistant advisor. That would be somebody who can enter the roster, they can register you for a team. They're not responsible for tagging animals, training the teams, scheduling all of the FFA events, and I think that is a misconception with people, that our assistant advisor can just take on some of the roles that you had. That's not necessarily the case whatsoever. It's more of a activities secretary assistant. We don't expect Mrs. Hawkins at the high school to train our football team. It would be very similar to that. So the missed opportunity, we have things that I like to highlight when people talk about where I would grow or where I would have grown is 2/3 of the high school programs in the state of Iowa have a middle school program. We do not. That is a huge downfall for Indianola, that we are lacking that middle school program. I mentioned that we have placement and entrepreneurship projects, but there's also a division called agri-science where students could investigate where their food's coming from, what kind of soil it's grown in, what kind of fertilizer is being used. I have not touched on that at all. I simply do not have time. It's an entire avenue that's not touched. We also could develop any of those SAE projects through further grants or more time focused on them. An advisor is encouraged to visit an SAE project with those students annually. That's 171 projects from 2019 that I mentioned that I needed to visit. So I try to check those off when I'm grocery shopping in Hy-Vee. Every single student that I can see, I have a SAE log with me. It might take me 2 hours to get my groceries one night, but I try to check off my SAE visits with those students at Hy-Vee when I get my groceries and make use of my own time. When I'm tagging animals, I'm trying to check off those projects because it is supervised. And how can we grow that and help them learn additional? So those are some missed opportunities. I also wanted to share the current classes that are being taught. This would be the third circle in that ag ed model. The courses that are being taught is the instruction piece. What an ag program should be is a student learning in the classroom and then applying it to their SAE project and applying it to their FFA knowledge. Finally, I wanted to share the opportunities in coursework. A survey was given to students just taking additional classes that other ag programs in the state offer and saying, these are offered in other schools. If you had the opportunity to take these, would you? And so just to put some numbers in front of you, these are some of the student numbers of interest that they had. So as I thought a lot about what I wanted to say and what I wanted to bring to the board, and the decision that I made to leave was solely based on the fact of the numbers in this program are uncontrolled and I cannot keep up with it any longer, which is making me a bad teacher. In my program, it's a hands-on program. I should be able to hand you a scalpel and a pig and we're gonna cut it up and we're gonna find the circulatory system and we're gonna talk about the chambers of the heart. With the numbers in my program, I can't safely do that. So I became a worksheet teacher. I'm not a worksheet teacher, which then made me feel like I was doing a disservice to the students. And I'm not willing to do that any longer. So moving forward, things that could be better. A hands-on education when numbers are under control, focused on those SAE projects and grants. Please look at a middle school program, the additional courses based on student interest, and getting back to that technical skill training. Where I'm moving to, my husband and I are going to do an addition and remodel our house, and it has come back over and over and over. There are not plumbers, there are not electricians, there are so many areas that people aren't in because all we do is push them to college. There's a little bit of both, and we need to find that, and a career and tech education program should have that. This program has shown you for 7 years, and I was in this room 2 years ago advocating that a second instructor is vital. A second instructor is going to be important to move it forward. Sadly, I share with my colleagues when I'm leaving, and 2 of the former instructors in Indianola said, so you bit the bullet, you're finally gonna throw in the towel for the exact same reason that they did. both in the 90s and the 2000s, you lost excellent instructors because the program became so large. It wasn't sustainable with one teacher, and they did what was best for them and left. That's sad to me. I'm very proud that I got to teach in Indianola. I love my program. I'm very passionate about ag education and what it can bring. I'm very disappointed in what the school district did and chose not to do to continue to grow this program to be outstanding like it could or should be. I do also would like to share with you, we do have a 2018 Indianola High School graduate who will graduate from Iowa State next spring with an ag education degree, who will be in Warren County. And it would be in the best interest of the school district to move forward, getting this position figured out so we don't burn out our newly hired teacher and get a position ready for her when she graduates next spring. Please look at the middle school and look at these opportunities that these kids deserve so you don't lose another instructor because the program is too large. The final paper I have for you, I did speak with Rob about this. He asked me to share it. These are all of the schools in the state of Iowa that have more than one ag teacher. If there's a number behind it, it's because they have 3 or 4 instructors. So I did also want to share that with you. So thank you for allowing me to teach in this district. Please keep this program in considerations as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Casey, for everything you did.
Thank you.
We certainly love your students when they do the mobile food pantry.
They
are
that.
They're amazing workers. So, thank you.
All right, Kim.
Adjourn?
Thanks, Keith.
Absolutely.
I'm Kim Gibson, and I am a former graduate in the 90s, and I'm a parent of a middle schooler and an elementary student here. And I'm also a member of the Ag Advisory of the Career and Technical Advisory Board, or Committee. I want to share with you none of the things that Casey did because there's so much to say. I don't need to repeat any of it, although I believe everything that she said. I've also seen several teachers come and go, but what really opened my eyes was joining this advisory committee and noticing that not only is the ag program in the situation where they have a lot of kids interested and really fun things to teach, but that they have too many kids for the situation that they have. So the food classes are full, the food classes are limited to certain grades of kids. Same thing is happening with the ag program. I think also it's a unique year because the business, the ag, and the foods programs all had a teacher leave for various reasons, but that's an opportunity to think about what might happen to the career and technical education programs if we don't consider that a priority. And I'm not saying that the board doesn't or that the school district doesn't, because I think it goes without saying that those kids are doing things that are different. I saw that you guys are going to start using Gallup, and I am familiar with Gallup from my work. The foundation of the Gallup poll is very familiar because of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as we talk about for the educators in the room, the bottom of the pyramid are the important things like I have food to eat and I feel psychologically safe at work. So other people are speaking to those today too. But I think ag education for sure, because it's one that I've experienced myself, is where you get to the top of the pyramid and you say, these are the things that really motivate me and interest me. I can be myself and find out new things. When we talk about kids not being motivated at school, these are the programs that really keep them engaged and keep them, I need to keep my grades up and everything else so that I can continue to do whatever that club is. So I would encourage you to think about the numbers in those programs. I know that some have been turned away, and I think we're a district that's not decreasing in size. We're not a district that needs to turn kids away. So if somebody wants to take 4 years of food class, they should be able to do that here. If somebody wants to take 8 semesters of different ag classes, they should be able to do that. If somebody just randomly as a senior decides, hey, I really like animals, I want to take animal science, as a senior, they should be able to do that, and we should give those opportunities here. I think I'm not sure the extent of the numbers that have been turned away. I'm not sure if we're recording those. But if we are, I would encourage you board members to find out how many we've turned away, what's the magnitude of that. I would also encourage when you're at association of school board meetings or where you're with other district professionals that you might find out how do those advisory programs or how do those career and technical education programs work there. And finally, because it's the root of all curiosity, I would just encourage you guys all to ask questions, to not just hear the presentations and to absorb it, but also to ask questions back, to have that deeper understanding of those programs. And I know you're all busy with many, many topics, but this is a really interesting one for many of us. So I ask you to just...
How many kids did you have this year? How many students total?
I don't know without adding it up, sorry.
Okay, I just,
And what's your biggest class, Casey?
It's 34 in class,
In one.
in one class.
in one class, 34.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. In your board packet, it's letter E.
If there are no questions, I will move board approve the consent agenda.
Motion made by Ken to approve,
Second it.
seconded by Donna. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion, any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next is the G1B. We're with the 2021-2022 K through 12 student handbook, high school handbook, middle school handbook, and elementary handbooks. I had one question that I asked Mr. Sadoff here earlier, and it was just in regards to the changes for the dress code for the high school. To me, it just felt like we were getting less, it was becoming less restrictive or more gray, I guess. So that was a little confusing to me, is like it was left up to the interpretation of somebody. So that was my only question that I had in the handbook area, and I just didn't know.
Yeah, I think, and I talked a little bit with President Keller, I think the intention was to not change the approach, but to change the language so that it couldn't be construed as being targeted at one gender. You know, that was the driver, I think, for that language change. You heard one of our speakers tonight mention dress code too, and that is always going to be an issue. You know, it's going to be something that that you want to maintain a standard. You are going to have to enforce. There probably always will be some interpretation, and I think that's why they were trying to just simplify the language too, in terms of the one tangible thing, making sure your undergarments are covered up, and then the other one, not being overly revealing. So it is pretty tough with any policy to cover every possible situation, so I think that's another reason they kind of went for broad language.
Any other?
Who's on these handbook committees? Is it just are there some teachers that sit on these handbook committees with the high school and the middle school and?
Yeah, we have a district employee handbook committee, but in terms of the student handbooks, yeah, that's the administrators will put together a teacher committee to consider. That is done at the building level.
So are there kids that want to wear hats in the building?
Well, there would always be kids that would want to wear hats in the building. That's one of those handbook battles or dress code battles you'll always have. Yeah.
Huh.
For sure.
I've always made kids take their hats off when they came in. That's interesting.
Oh no, you would have some kids.
Some students said can't wear your hat in the building
age.
all the time.
Yeah, that's always gonna be one of those dress code issues. Yep.
So the interpretation would be left up to the administrator in charge of what is excessively revealing then?
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what it is now too. I mean, although, because an administrator can't be every place in a big building and doesn't want to focus solely on dress code, I mean, it could be, you know, if that were really, you want to spend all day, every day walking around looking for dress code infractions, you probably could.
Sure.
So the administrator will make that judgment, but we hope that if staff see something that they think is inappropriate, that a staff, you know, any staff member would address it.
Yeah.
And then
I
if there's
just
some
didn't want it to be
question,
more gray and then like one kid says, oh, this person got to dress this way and I didn't, like,
and
why is that?
that's almost the same answer as the hat. That's, you know, that is gonna come up, you know, a student's gonna feel like, well, why are you singling me out? Wednesday I saw this other kid wear something that was just as revealing. You know, dress code is gonna be one of those hassles to deal with. I don't,
And a lot of times too, it's personal perception, right?
Yep.
Like how
Yep.
somebody perceives. All of our definitions of whatever could be different, and so I think that's where the gray area sits, is somebody could look fine to one person and very offensive to another person, whether it's the level of the shorts or the tank top they're wearing.
And ultimately, if there is some kind of question, dispute, whatever, I mean, it is gonna go to the office in the end, you know, if there's some disagreement over whether it's a violation or not, so.
Well, there are people that are just gonna do it, see how far they can go.
Right.
Some of that too, yeah.
If you want to run through all of these, I'd happily make one motion at the end.
Okay, any other questions on any of them then? That was the only one area that I had discussion with other people about.
My only question was who gets the student health handbook?
Who gets it?
Every student?
The parent. Oh.
I mean,
Probably online.
Yeah, I know it's available online. I don't know that they're handing a physical copy to every student. I don't think so.
Okay, so it's more a handbook for the staff, our nurses and stuff?
I mean, it
On how to
does.
proceed?
Yeah, it does outline procedures for sure. Yep. But I think if a parent had a question, they could find it.
And our nurses are in on that.
Yeah, nurses are the main architects of that. Yep.
Nobody else has questions? I'll move that the board approve 2021-22 K-12 student handbooks, the teacher and association handbooks, the transportation handbook, the student health handbook. That would be the motion.
Second.
Motion made by Ken to approve letters B, C, D, E, all of those named handbooks in your board packet. Seconded by Sue. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next is the district calendar amendment with Mimi.
Yeah, there were a couple of things, just wanting to add verbiage for the seniors' last day. It's the same as the preschoolers' last day, adding that verbiage to the handbook. We wanted to move commencement from the 29th to May 22nd. If the seniors' last day is the 20th to the 29th is quite a big span of time, and typically we don't like to see that much time between the two. And then the last item is having all the students dismiss at 1:30 on the 27th. The state requires that seniors cannot get out more than 30 hours before the rest of the class. So if seniors get out the 20th and we have a full day on that following Friday, it exceeds by 2 hours that 30-hour requirement. So still wanting to get the seniors out a week early because that's fun for them too, but
This would be a board action item.
It would be because it's a board-approved calendar, so anytime we want to make any change, and that the language of the last day wasn't on there previously, which is nice to have on there so everybody knows. And then, that minor change in hours, that hour and a half to to get us within the 30-hour guideline too would be a calendar change, so, yeah.
We need a motion to change the calendar.
Wait a minute, okay, wait,
Oh,
sorry,
I'm-
one second here, sorry, Donna.
All right.
I just thought of something.
All right, I move we change the calendar to
Um,
accommodate the
okay,
changes that Mimi would like to see.
okay, motion made by Donna,
Second.
seconded by Ken. Okay, I have a question.
Out of order, son.
Yes,
I don't want to go down the detail.
so are we did have a full day at the end, and now we
Right.
just have a half day?
Well, 1:30,
1:30 dismissal, so it's more than a half day, everybody's still getting lunch.
90-minute early out.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right. I do want to just remind the board, I think it's important to know that I think we should try to get back to the 180 days. I think several of us have mentioned that in the past and stuff, and I think that should be very much a fixture, I think, for Indianola School District, for the future, for next year.
And it is a board-approved calendar, so that's a board priority. Certainly can build a calendar with that, understanding that will, with the August 23rd or later start date, that will put kids into June, which, we've tried to avoid, but it can be done. And the other thing that the board has within their power too is, this year we didn't make people make up snow days. We used those hours over the minimum, but you can require kids to make up that lost instructional time for snow days. So there definitely are things the board can do if it's a priority on that front. I just want to.
That would make my children really happy. I told them they needed to make up their snow days.
I bet.
I'd really be a winning moment.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next is the Board Curriculum Committee meeting report.
I will start. And hopefully, Mr. On will help me out here. So we had actually a really good meeting. We had several different things that we went through. What do we have first up there? The Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment. This is one that is done by the state, correct?
This is with our Central Iowa group, our school districts that are together to help them form their action plans.
Yes, and we did life skills and careers, so we went through and you have different elements that you have to go through. And so we passed, Indianola passed all the different elements that were graded on, but it also showed areas that we could grow in. And some of those areas that we could grow in is to, if you look over, do you guys have this at all? No, the sheet? No.
It's further in the board packet.
Oh, is it a board packet? Yeah, so basically we did a nice job, but we looked at we talked a lot about the Zello, purchasing the Zello software. And that's one way that we can help improve our different areas and room for growth there. We talked about community involvement with each of the strands of career and technical programs. Like Casey spoke about agriculture, consumer science, and industrial tech. We are in a good position to meet requirements for the different things we're kind of evaluated on. And then we'll get a regional plan together where we are able to kind of work with other schools and help better form kind of where our improvements and growth should be.
I think what I would add is just we're continuing to build that understanding of the advisories that were mentioned earlier by public comment, that we want to make those more robust. One of the past recommendations, I think it was from the business review, was to have the advisories meet more frequently. And this is an example of the guidance that we can work with in partnership with our region to look at what are the priorities, where are we at currently, and even though if we're meeting minimum expectations, where can we grow? and to really use those action plans and follow up every single year and multiple times with the advisories to say, are we growing? And earlier this evening too, from public comment was, how are we preparing to do that? What are our priorities in those areas? Further on, I'll speak about some of the School Improvement Advisory Committee input that mirrors that. So you're hearing it from multiple avenues now as to what some of the community and staff comments are to how can we grow this for our students. So there are frameworks in place to help the school administration and advisories to help provide some of that information to make decisions moving forward. But it was just really interesting for me to sit here tonight and hear some of the additional comments to say that really aligns with the voice that came out of the School Improvement Advisory Committee this year also. So again, this was just an example of some of the framework that is put in place to help those programs to continue to grow.
Is there a time throughout the year that we'd be able to hear from like the advisory committee that Kim serves on, like those groups, where the board would be able to hear their reports on what they're suggesting or?
Absolutely. That would just be something that I can take back to Jeff Siebersma, because at that level from the high school, he oversees those advisories within those programs. I work with him on more of the reports and what comes out of those for some of those long-term projections, whether that's staffing, curriculum, those needs.
And I heard that like some of those committees were lacking in participation there. When's the next time we come up with names of individuals to serve on those committees?
I believe that's annually. I don't know if Jeff, they had asked at the high school for a multi-year commitment like we did for SIAC to try and improve that participation rate. And I don't know as to the depth as to how many people are being invited to those, but I'm sure he can provide that information.
Okay.
So I'll make a note and follow up for that with him.
Yeah, a lot of our curriculum meetings too have been pretty heavy on the Skills USA and on the career and technical areas. So I appreciate you guys coming today because I know that it is a part of this board's focus, and it's been in talk for curriculum in the curriculum board meeting. How can we address people for not college, because it's just not what everyone's path may be. And so continuing to work on that certainly is a priority for myself and I think other board members. So
another example you brought up, Sue, was the term Zello, which is mentioned in here. And one of those pieces is that it's a requirement that every student in 8th grade at that point have developed an individual career plan, and that gets reviewed yearly through the high school levels to, again, make sure they're taking courses that guide them on their pathway of interest and whatever they might want to do post-secondary. And the guidance department wasn't always, I guess, was still looking for a tool that could give us even more depth in that area. And this was the first year that they started to use Zello. So they're to have a comprehensive timeline and implementation plan of that software. Christy Ellis currently is the administrator who oversees our guidance K-12 department and works with Jeff Siebersma too, because there's a heavy focus on career pathways too at the high school level. So that's what Zello is for that. And the data from that program gets reported to the state yearly as to are we adhering to that where kids are creating their plans, and are they having contact with a counselor at least once a year to go over their plans, to do things like interest inventories, things like that to help develop that self-awareness of where they might want to proceed.
And just anecdotally, 2 different middle school students who were on our School Improvement Advisory Committee commented specifically on Zello and how good and how engaging it was. And I think it is an upgrade over. We were using a free product before that didn't really go into the depth with careers that this is for kids. So I think it's going to be a really positive thing.
Is it an acronym or is it?
That's the company name, the software name. I don't know, XELLO, Zello. I don't know where they came up with it, but they thought it was catchy, but it's not an acronym.
It's not spelled like.
Well, Z sound out of an X, that's.
XELLO. Next thing, we just talked about the end of year report for the teacher leadership and compensation system. Just looked at kind of how the pandemic had shifted some of the TLC goals, just with, them really working hard for the teachers and what they need this year and stuff like that. So there's some good data in there if you guys want to read through that. And then I think later in finance we'll approve the staff that are going to be in those new positions in the different TLCs. So will you go over there, or Donna, you can take the fast literacy and math, or
Actually, I was actually pretty, obviously it wasn't what it has been in the past, but when you consider that kids were in school for 9 weeks, basically, and they came to school only till 1:30, and so all the kids that need extra help in reading, or whatever they need help in, all that time was cut. So, normally you'd go for a half an hour intervention. Well, that was cut to 20 minutes most of the time. So the numbers are there. You guys can see them. I think it was like 1 to 9% lower. Is that what?
Right, compared to 2 years ago, because we did not have spring results from last year. Because we weren't in school on site. Across the buildings, from the elementary to the middle school, there was a range of 1 to 9% lower on our spring literacy results than we were 2 years ago. And so the committee had gone through a variety of the different screeners that are administered from different grade levels, K-8. In mathematics, the first time that those were used was winter of last year for the mathematics ones. The state rolled those screenings out after they did literacy first for several years. So the ones from this spring are the first spring ones that we have. So we couldn't go back farther than that, but they ranged from an increase of 11% to a decrease of 3% when we compared from this fall to this spring for mathematics growth across the elementary to middle school. So that's that type of a learning loss that we want to look even closer at, use some of our ESSER funding to address, and not just solely focusing on remediation. Some of the national recommendations is that we continue to accelerate kids through their learning, and as those moments come up where they've missed some content or missed a skill, that we do that right in time attention to those skills instead of saying, okay, here's your remediation time, we're doing it here. We want to keep moving them forward and fill those pieces in as they go. So the state will be releasing many other recommendations of things that are research-based that the ESSER funding can be used for. We haven't seen those yet, even though I know Jonna will be talking about and sharing some of the ideas that we've been discussing administratively, trying to prepare for when that information will come.
Because those skills that measure decoding, word identification, and comprehension, those are all broken down separately, so the teachers would know what the weakness.
That's what impressed me in literacy. There were 6 or 7 sheets.
Right.
Each one, if people out there look at them on our thing, read the titles at the top of what they're showing. So they're telling the teachers exactly where to focus in on the different things. It's a very sophisticated system. So that's, naturally I prefer numbers never be negative. But I would also say, and I haven't done it, if I compare this to the other school districts in central Iowa, I'm sure would be right there. And we'd all wish we weren't, but,
Right.
And we'll have, because we asked about comparing those to central Iowa and then state-wise and national, and you said probably in the fall we'll be able to do that.
ISASP, yeah.
When we looked at the fall results, when those were released to us from the AEA, who looks at the AEA 11 kind of central Iowa results, at that time we were above the growth rates of other central districts with that. So again, we're not wishing ill will on anybody else, but we do want to know that our time spent with our students, either remotely and on site, or when they were in quarantine, that we tried to keep that loss as small as possible. So.
Did a good job. Teachers did a good job.
Yeah, they did.
Still.
It's a tough year. I was impressed with how well everyone did, really.
Anything else on curriculum?
Nope, I don't think we have any action items because John will do that one yet.
Next is the school advisory committee meeting report.
Sorry, I'm still scrolling. So these were the minutes from May 20th. Just again, continuing that theme that, again, one of our public speakers mentioned tonight as being a member on, that through their conversations, this funneled into these 4 areas of life skills, academics, opportunities, and self-development. And at their last meeting in May, I kind of gave them an overview of data from multiple sources that we normally might think of as an annual progress report, but we don't have the ISES results back yet. We don't have some graduation data yet. So early fall, I'll compile all the most recent data together and bring it to you as a school board. So we did use some of the past data that we had available at that time. And what they were looking for was, what type of data do we have currently that is matching up with our areas of interest and or concern, or again, of those hopes and dreams that we have for our students and our programs is from where they started originally. From those minutes then, this leads into what I put together as just a summary report for the year. You've had so much information throughout, I thought I'll just put it all in one place for you as to where we came from. The SIAC started this year based on some of the needs assessment data from 2019. We think back, and from that, 2 pieces were pulled from that on this graph. One was that important areas of student learning are missing in our current curriculum. That was one piece that I pulled out from that. And the other one was, what is the top priority for improvement? And so again, that's what guided those questions for them when we held the World Cafe. What skills do we hope our students will possess, and what opportunities do we hope our students will experience throughout their years in Indianola to be prepared for future success? Through this then, in summary, we also were learning from conversation that communication is one piece for us to delve into more deeply across the district so that parents are aware of things that are happening and that are taking place. And not to say we already do that, but so that we all have this baseline of knowledge, and then how do we improve from there? An example from that would be that a lot of conversation was centered around financial literacy. And it was not known that within our economics course at the high school, it's required for every student to take economics, which also contains financial literacy. There's also an elective course that they can also take for personal finance. And so we have those, but we don't want to say that's enough and check it off that we have that. An example would be like through conversation with one of our high school students. Her hope was that for example, we would spend less time on teaching kids how to write checks and to teach them more about how to fill out a W-2 form. So just seeing in their world and getting involved in work, not to say you don't have to learn how to do a check, but let's throw out an example. Let's say we're spending 5 days on that. Maybe that could be a mini lesson, but we're including more things that seem more relevant to them and as their lives are changing. So within that, I put in this report just a summary of some of the key points of the committee discussion where we ended this spring. The intent is to take this back to every building administrator for us to go through those course offerings and really get a true sense of what is there, what pieces might be those next steps, which can also, again, brings in that advisory from the CTE advisories also as to where that might fit. It can bring in information from their student boards if they have their student groups, if they have a parent group, and what might that look like moving forward. So underneath each one of those strands, I just listed some of those. When I say key, it's not all encompassing. This is just for that summary report. And I put in bold some of those things that really continue to come out over and over. For example, in academics, student choice was very important. And course options are listed in there, which you'll see heard a connection to that. Some students might feel like they're running out of courses by the time they get to their senior level and find that they have a lot of opens in their schedule because they just don't have other things to pick from that might be of their interest. In life skills and self-development, really focusing in more on how we are teaching kids to communicate, increase our promotion and exploration of career and job options. Again, Zello fits in with that, but we don't want to say, check, we have that. Let's do a deep dive and see what are some of those next steps. Intensify our personal finance education and develop a culture of support so that all students feel comfortable with their relationships. Again, you heard some of that this evening. Other opportunities too. This was another strong strand in increasing our exposure and understanding of other cultures and ideas, and provide as many authentic learning opportunities as we can for kids. And then again, another bullet point I put on there was just communication. We delved into that a little bit, and of course there's a wide spectrum. Some people think that I receive the exact amount I need through the avenues I need. Others know I want more. Even if it's daily, that's okay. For somebody else, that would be too much. But I really think we have to take a look at promotion and building knowledge of everything that we do offer, but not to say we can't do things differently or improve, but so that we do have a baseline. I do think all of our parents should know we are teaching financial literacy, and there is another opportunity for that too. So again, a lot of awareness building, I think, would lend itself to building even more pride for our educational system here. It's just some of the things are unknown as to what's happening. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think how to ask this. So I'm guessing there were many years there leading up to recent times that we were trying to prepare kids for a 4-year college course, or for life going into college instead of something like 2-year or the career technical. Would it be good to do like some type of an audit to see, are we heavy on electives that could push kids towards 4-year and not as much towards like what was mentioned this evening, towards those career and technical options where either the kids are looking at those and saying, like you said, I don't want to take any of those because I'm not interested in that, or they just take it because, oh, it's somebody that just is going to fill up their schedule or something, or they force themselves into a study hall because we don't have another option for them. Is there any thought to that? 'Cause now that it's becoming more, I guess, the need is being shown that we need plumbers and electricians and these skills. We need to look at that, I guess, at the high school level, that balance.
I would say absolutely, but in addition to that, not just the balance, because we do have the course handbook for the high school, and if you look at the table of contents, you can readily see, in a sense, the categories and the numbers of things that are being offered.
Yeah.
You probably don't see as closely how many sections are being offered, and I think those conversations with the registrar at the high school, who is heavily involved with seeing the numbers and the trends over many years, is crucial, along with the counselors who do that scheduling. But I would also say from the student aspect of their perceptions on why do you have opens in your schedule, and what is your interest level in this, and what is not being filled. But absolutely, because we don't want to build something because we think we know what they would want in a sense, but also we have that obligation to look at the trends in the nation and in our state. And also that would align us with some of the state programs on being a future-ready school. And there are many frameworks out there that we can use to say, are we future-ready?
Yeah.
To what degree are we offering these things? And I was doing some research this winter about that and allow them to say, are we future ready with technology? and learning for kids through their skills and communication, and the Future Ready framework can help us do that.
I feel like at one time, Kim mentioned a product of the 90s. I was right there with her. That we had those available at one time in Indianola schools, because I remember I took some of those, and I know that those aren't available anymore, some of those types of classes.
I think it's one of the things we're landing on here, as we stop and reevaluate where we want to go.
Right.
We haven't done it in a while. What it's going to what it's going to require is hard decisions to shift.
Right.
Because we still have, unfortunately, most of the time, the same number of kids in our high school. You know, we're going to grow someday, but you know, and all of that. So there's only so much money, so shifting probably has to happen to some extent.
We did add 0.5 full-time equivalency in industrial tech this year. That had been a half-time program for a long time. It's full-time this year. And the other thing that we have many more students in now that wasn't really a thing, or would have been a pretty new thing in the 90s, is the Career Academy. So we do have a lot of students taking courses for DMAC credit.
I was gonna say, where does DMAC come in all? I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
so,
career,
I mean,
yeah.
and I don't think that should be a replacement for us teaching career and technical.
Okay.
And I think we should, in a lot of cases, we should be doing entry-level or introductory type courses that then feed into those programs.
That DMAC offers.
Yeah, because that is primarily a junior and senior program too. But last I looked, we had over 70 students going to Southridge, taking career technical programs. And some of that is like health sciences or education too. It's not all becoming welders or auto mechanics or whatever. But I will say we have a commitment, a lot of awareness that we want to ramp up that part of it. That's something when we hired Mr. Siebersma a couple of years ago that I said this needs to really be a priority. And then we're continuing to try to go down that road in terms of looking at apprenticeships. The School to Work program was mentioned, and Mrs. Busby. So you're not going to arrive at everything suddenly or have it perfectly done in a year. But really our mindset in education is supposed to be setting priorities and continuous improvement anyway. So I think this will be a road we keep on.
There's always things we want to add. We never talk about what we're going to take away.
Right.
We're going to get to that.
Right.
Probably a work session down the road for just,
Maybe a couple of years down the road.
no, for what the vision looks
At
like.
least past November. Okay.
Yeah, I wonder why.
Thank you. Sorry, did you have more? And I might have
No,
interrupted you.
just that I offer that to you as like, again, a summary of some of those key points from the advisory. Their input is, again, for you to take as a board when in consideration, when you set priorities or have interests. And
Because, it looks like, the highest 46% take the meeting individual needs and the prepare for college, career, and life. That's huge. That's almost, half of it. So people probably, I don't know what the breakdown of all that is, as far as how many wanted the tech or the ag or and the college. It would be interesting to see what, those numbers broke down.
Yeah, my comment was, with those minutes and most of the other ones we've been getting over the last 3 or 4 months from the committees, they're getting more complete, more informative. When I finished reading the one on the SIAC, I knew an awful lot.
Right.
And that's appreciated.
Yeah, I was going to say the same.
But all of them are picking up like, it's great.
All right. We'll move on to the board HR committee meeting report.
Be happy to. Well, it's either him or I, and I think he's got to do finance because he's the only one there for that. So we went through just the list of, the first thing there, and you all know it, what positions were open, what were filled. The important thing is Mimi did not report any problems, anything hard to find. Everything was progressing there. Then we had a short discussion. I don't know if you're all aware, but the legislature passed a law that all students will, all classrooms, major classrooms, there might be some there, will have an American flag in them. and that all students K through 12 will start with the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning. And so we chatted about it a little bit. I mean, nobody's disagreeing or anything. It's trying to figure out what it is. And like with anything else, I think it's just waiting a little bit to see if there's any regulations that come with the law that's passed on that one too.
Right, I was just in a Department of Ed Zoom today, and they were emphasizing all these education bills. They will send out a letter to the field the next week or two that will kind of give a recap, guidance for schools. Some of the laws will require Department of Education rulemaking. That's not overly complicated one.
Yeah, we don't think.
But, yep, stay tuned and we'll.
Okay, we reviewed a message we had received from an associate and gave it to Kelly to follow up with. Then we had a short discussion on, diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as the importance of teaching both sides of an issue. And that got in, because we both, we've been reading that some districts have had trouble, and we have out there some new cultural ideas that are gaining favor with some people and not gaining favor with others. But as we talked in the committee, and this discussion will go on for a long time, I don't think we solved anything, is that our job is, kind of to teach the past, the history and all of that, not current events and some of these things, not to respond to the political environment at the moment, but what's the best overall thing. The most encouraging thing to me from that meeting, well, brilliant things that Rob and I said.
Right.
Right. But the understanding of this area that Art has and the overseeing that he's doing. And, I can't believe for so long, he talked about something that's right down the middle of the road and probably what we should be doing. So I'm very comfortable we're looking at this area. I have no idea what's going to happen in the future. But am I kind of interpreting that to how you felt there that day?
This just came after some things we had, some families had reached out to us.
Yeah, we've had some of those.
That's it. Not as many words as you old curriculum people, but we can say it.
We're focused.
Okay, next is the issuance of the 2021-2022 teacher leader contracts.
Okay, this is an action item, right?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
So do we have to do these all, all
we can do them all
individually,
at
or they can just
All in one.
make a motion to approve
Yes.
the teacher leadership, collaborative innovation, teachers, so I'd say I'm all individual, this is contract.
You can just say
Yes,
them
thank you. List of the 21-22 teacher leadership contracts, collaboration and innovation teachers, PLC leadership team, focus group teams, for their contracts.
Second.
The team leaders.
Motion made by
Oh, the team leader. Okay.
PLC leadership. Motion made by Sue, seconded by
Not many
Ken.
choices.
All those in favor, or any further discussion by the board? By the four of us. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
I'm laughing at the name of the bimbo bread bakers.
Oh, I saw that
sorry.
too. I was
That's
like,
why I was
are you kidding?
I had never
Jumped
heard
ahead,
that
you
before.
jumped
Yeah.
ahead.
That's one we've had every year in the past. Yeah.
Really? That just popped up.
Actually,
on my
that's when
screen.
it was earth grains, is what it became, it's earth grains.
Oh.
We've had a unique, with the new food service director, we've had a unique situation where she's willing to go out and look for opportunities that we didn't have. I mean, that we looked at very by the book, which was fine. But she said, I think there's other bread companies out there from listening to other schools, business officials at schools, they aren't getting any bids. So they are going to go through their local grocery store, which if you look at the dollars on the numbers, the quantity of bread that we're purchasing, it's crazy. So what between Nevada and Urbandale and Indianola did is they talked to those three companies, Bimbo, which is one that's got a lot of schools, Panagold has a lot of schools, but Rotella happens to be the vendor for a lot of the restaurants in these communities. So that's how they ended up with that. They offered all the products that we listed. You'll see that we're paying a little bit more, but we're able to get the products without having to go source them ourselves, which is difficult when you're trying to, you're in a production kitchen and you're trying to move forward. So if you look at the breakdown, you can see the way that we were talking about how to present it. Go to the next page, maybe please. In trying to explain the blank areas, when it doesn't show anything in the Rotella Bakery, that they have it, but it would skew the numbers further than what it already is. The other companies did not even offer those. So in a world of bidding, like for our school buses, for our construction projects, if you can't offer them all, you need to say, I'm out. But that's not how these type of bids go, because they think, well, if I can give them some, maybe they'll take our bid. So
The phrase that's usually used, you talk about taking the lowest responsive bidder, and it's considered that they're not responsive if they can't give you what you asked for. I mean, we can spec what we want, what we need, so.
So some of the benefits of it, they will offer, 4 days out of 5, they'll be in town. They'll be able to offer delivery for us. Again, they had everything. They had the gluten-frees, which we're getting more and more of those students that are that. And so we want to make sure that we're able to offer that for those students. So.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how important the sourcing is. To have that come on a predictable delivery schedule from one person rather than try to take our people out of the buildings and have them run around town and look for it, which also would not, it would end up costing more in addition to the hassle. So that's really a big factor here.
So the recommendation is to approve the red bid from Rotella?
I'll move we approve the Rotella Bakery
Thanks, Donna.
bread for our district.
Motion made by Donna to approve.
It's good, I like Rotella.
I do too.
I'll second the
Sec-
bread.
Seconded by Sue. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Can I say one thing about food?
Go ahead.
Just, can I jump in? Yeah, besides, it's good. I like it a lot. I just wanted to just say one thing out to our food staff. So we've been doing the lunches, right, the school lunches, and they are just doing an amazing job. Like, it's not just sandwiches, and they send home a sheet of paper like it's chicken patties and it's pizzas and chicken fajitas, and so
That's great.
they are doing a great job, and Abby and her entire staff and the kids think it's amazing. They got Doritos today and then they had this little plastic thing with all the parts of the different things for taco salad. So it's like a walking taco, right? You have it all, you got your Doritos and then everything. So they're like going way outside of just the normal, and they're thinking outside the box, and they're doing a great job.
And the utilization has really gone up. I mean, we've been over 400.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
We're not hitting those numbers previously. And we are combining breakfast and lunch, multiple meals, so it's a convenience thing for families. So I would second what you said. I think it's been great.
And I think the teams, so if you see them out and about, tell them they're doing a
And
great
it's
job.
benefiting our program. So, when people say, well, I don't need that, well, it does benefit the program. If you pick it up and use it, it does benefit our program, because the reimbursement rate is enough to cover our staff cost and the food as well, and with a little bit of revenue that.
I was thinking of adopting a young child so I could start using it.
I got 2.
I'll give you one.
I mean.
We've had a 3 and a 5-year-old grandchild for 4 days now.
You could go there.
I will tell you as a fact, grandparents watching 3 to 5-year-olds lose their will to live after the 3rd day.
And those are hard ages. Oof.
Right. Next is our Envision Architecture Contract and Amendment.
So I'm sure you read through that. And you notice that, the contract itself is very generic. And that was kind of discussed, we discussed it early, and then that became what it was. We were working within the vision. This will be the baseline. And so the amendment is for the auxiliary building services for that, so.
Are there any additional costs or anything in here we're not aware of?
If you read through that, it does talk about that a cost that kind of surprised us is the civil cost, civil engineering, which is Snyder. Snyder is who we've used in the past, but the estimate was like $50,000. So that was higher than we thought it would be. The comment, and that would be an up to that amount. It may not be that, but it's up to that amount, which was, we talked about it with Envision, and they said they're the ones that brought that number to us, and it's almost, they're wondering, do they know something that another civil engineer doesn't know in the process of what we're doing in the area that a civil engineer would do the work with, water and, drainage and stuff like that. So they kind of went high. Again, it's a service project, so it may not get that high. That was the thing that was a shock to us, probably.
And you two are comfortable in our attorneys?
We've
Yeah,
we've
it's
talked
been
to them.
vetted, yep.
I'll move approval.
Motion made by Ken to approve,
I'll second it.
seconded by Donna. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next is the board finance committee meeting report. Oh, yes. It does feel like a... Okay, so we talked about the, oh yeah. Yes. Yeah, the ESSER 3 funds, right? And then where those could potentially be put toward those, all of those bulleted items where you see there are opportunities that we could have towards potential expenses to use those funds for.
I can add a little bit to that. Right now, the Department of Education is working towards, we now have to have a plan in place. Though we're starting to spend some of those funds because we've used up our second pot of money, we're into the third. It will be available, the plan document, we believe, they've told us will be available July 1st, though we'll have spent some of these funds prior. And with that, there's a public input piece to that it's, different. I'm hoping that they give us some guidance on it, because right now it is, talking to different schools, some are just, putting it on their website, and they're asking for public input. Well, not everybody is driven to the website for any particular reason. So some are asking doing a public hearing at a board meeting. So I hope that there's some guidance that will help us do what's right for our community. So that's still being fleshed out, I think. It's not a done deal, but these are the pieces that you can use. The usage by the feds is very broad, so we're still trying to, we're not being blatantly, oh, that's COVID, or this is COVID, or we're gonna buy a new bus and that's COVID. We're not doing that. We're trying to focus so that we can be better after we come out of this.
And there are people pushing that envelope a little bit, with maybe vehicle purchase or expanding facilities or different things that, you would really have to explain how is that COVID related. I mean, we try to stay more directly aligned to that so that it's not some kind of reporting nightmare for us later.
Right, as we try to finish this up. So again, it's 2.6 million, and estimated 500,000 is used for, addressing learning loss.
And that's where Mrs. Durant said the DE is generating some list of research-based things. And again, we know some things that we're doing are going to apply to that, but.
Do we have a lot of time with that? For instance, if one of the things we wanted was expanded some for next summer, would that go?
Yeah.
That does, and actually this summer, we've got some summer school going on right now.
Yeah, I know.
And that's being used for that as well. so.
How many do we have? How many summer schools do we have going?
We have elementary and we have a limited, kind of a targeted middle school one because there were fewer staff available to do that. So we do have something at those two levels. High school, it will be more of a credit recovery approach like they usually do, so.
Next thing we talked about was that flexibility fund transfer for the TQC funds. I think there was some leftover funding, is that correct, in that area or that fund? And so we have to have a public hearing in order to move those funds over. So that's what we'd be going into now.
Later, after we finish this, yeah.
After what?
After the facility, it's the.
Oh, it is, isn't it?
You be patient, be
We'll be
patient.
doing that. Though I'd like to do it right now. So that's where we'll be going next year, is for the public hearing to go ahead and approve that, to move that fund, that money over, and then to purchase those expenditures of the core knowledge, language arts, Amplify, and Reveal Mathematics, McGraw-Hill.
And then internally, we'll be moving that to, those funds are already earmarked for curriculum, so we're going to then use those funds for internal, district only. It doesn't, the state won't matter, doesn't care, but it will be used for staff development in places in staff, like when we get new curriculum, that isn't used for.
Like that CKLA elementary training and work this summer.
It doesn't
That's
fit
what
under
the support
TQC, you're right,
Yeah.
right, so it's still gonna be kind of used for stuff that teachers will be doing and but.
And then we discussed preschool funds proposed to clear deficit lunch balances.
Yes, and I just got the information from the food service department this afternoon, and it looks like if everything, as we reconcile out, everything looks, I think we're at 24,000, just under 25,000. So we've actually addressed this.
That's our negative lunch number now.
Wow.
So we've really whittled it
We're
down.
at 77 at the worst, 77,000.
So you found, and this is passed.
So this is people that are still in our district that have deficit counts, okay? So what we talked about in our meeting was, can we and so the lowest, because it addressed all negative balances, so the lowest negative balance is like 3,000. The least negative is 160. So they were able to clear many families to get this clean. So what this would do is preschool kind of ebbs and flows depending on the, because it's half of an FTE per student we get. But a few years ago, as we started looking at that, I think that if we have balance left over, it would be wise as we look at, big expenditures would be a playground and a playground refurbish if we need to do that. To say, not just get rid of that, but with these lunch balances, we can't do this any other way. We can't just the general fund just can't give them money. And the food service department through the state is difficult to deal with. They just said, we know that you have deficit balances, you just said, we know you can't spend it out of the food service.
And so we can currently now just work on wiping that out because no one's accruing balances right now.
Right.
Because it doesn't cost anything.
If meals continue to be free, which it's trending that way, we don't know that for sure.
Right.
The only thing that they would have to pay for then would be extras.
Right.
So if you had to pay for extras, you have to have cash.
Yeah, so
And I
we
think
don't
that's
really,
fair,
we don't have to really work on making sure these people that have the deficits are signed up for free and reduced lunch because
Well, I think we
everything's free
still
right
wanna
now.
do that because Title I is based on free.
That's what I was
reduced
gonna
lunch.
say, like
There are
what's our
different
action
grants in Title
plan?
I and, yeah.
I mean, do we have an action plan to follow up with these families to say, yes, your budget or your deficit may be less, but
You're down.
how are we
Some of these may not be
bringing
free and reduced.
them alongside?
That's not always the case, because technically, if you had your free and reduced application filled out, you would not have a deficit, you wouldn't have a deficit. So.
So is it just getting families signed up for that? Is that a lot of it?
Some of it is, yep.
Okay.
And some of it is, a lot of it is direct certification, so anymore, a lot of it is electronic. So it would be those, like, if someone lost their job last month and that wouldn't be in the system yet, they could get that in.
So
That
maybe
would be
just some
the-
conversations with some of these.
Yeah, you still want to do that, because the other piece to that is if they don't do it, they can't get free textbooks. And that would then take them to collections if they don't do that. So I would suggest anybody that you work with that you talk to, that offer the free and reduced app and sign the waiver that's on that form.
So we're addressing those with some of these families, like food service is the ones that.
Well, we're trying to.
Okay.
It's very passive because it's a form, right? They don't have the staff to go out and call everybody and
okay.
do everything, They're not able to do that. But anytime that people call, they help them. So, but then the suggestion would be that, we have in the statewide preschool right now $167,000. Last year, our deficit was $50,000 at the end of the year, $50,298. We're at 24 something. We wait till the end of June to see, maybe somebody will pay something, that would be awesome. But if we use 24,000 of that 167, that would be something that you guys need to decide if that's important to you, to clear that out and then move forward.
What do we do with the balances that are in people's accounts that, like before everything ended abruptly last year?
What were they?
Yeah,
People
what
who
do
have
we do
positive
with all
money in there?
people that have positive money?
People that have positive, right now they still have positive because they can use that for a la carte. If you're at the middle school and the high school, there's a la carte options. There's also milk. Milk is, if you bring your lunch and you want to milk, you have to pay for that.
Okay. So that can be used.
Some balances are still there.
Cash then,
Right.
that could be used for extra, okay.
And, yeah, if they had money in their account, they could use that. And the thing is, the food service director is saying we can't allow them to go negative, because if you allow them to go and get a pizza and all the different options for a la carte, you're gonna pay more than what a meal would be. So that would be coming down the next year, fiscal year, once we clear so we know where we're at. That would be something that I'd like to bring forward that we can.
Would we have to have a public hearing for that?
We'd have to do this,
Same thing
basically
as
the
what
same thing, just listing it that way.
Okay.
So,
And then Jonas shared the Pepple and Save budgets with us there. And we do not have a board finance meeting tomorrow. Nothing to share for that. So we're not gonna have one tomorrow morning, Ken?
he's not on that anymore.
Oh, you're,
Donna is.
Donna, Carolyn, that's the other one, okay. Sorry.
No wonder he wasn't answering you.
Right. I was thinking I was giving you.
Does
the-
Carolyn know you don't have a meeting tomorrow morning?
Yes.
Yes.
Don't you just feel those other three just get in our way? It's better just.
Just wait, they're coming back. Next is the Board Facilities Committee meeting report.
If you take a look, the first thing that's reported there is a little graph, talks about just kind of an overview of the schools. And I'm still following up, working with trying to get a good way to respond to that investigation, the plan we had when we had all our schools inspected, what needs to be done, what should be done. And this is kind of an overview. And then we talked how I was looking for a little more itemized type thing, and they're working on it. So progress is being made in that area. Breakdown of the insurance update, and as with all this, I'm gonna let Jonna talk. This is the insurance that we have that covers copiers, yada, yada, yada. Jonna, I'll let you talk for a minute or two on that one.
We received a preview for next year's. They're reducing it by 10%. It's, right now we are at, we've received about $130,000 back, probably, and that's, even though it says the loss, the graph shows 5/12/21. I think the claims are more like March. And the comment that, and this is our first full year, so the comment that we're hearing from the insurance company is typically this is when you see a lot of the claims being brought in, especially like with computers and the copiers when there's time to refurb everything. So, you know, I guess we're gonna try, we're thinking that we should probably try it, you know, work again. I mean, we've got a good system with, you know, with our laptops, and our copiers are really, we would typically get rid of them. I mean, but they've held up pretty well, so, and with this, it's all covered. So, you know, we don't wanna be completely out of date with technology, but I know that Ray has passed it on, you know, last year it was supposed to happen, and then this year, I don't think we're working on it this year, I think it could be another year down the road. And one of the comments that he made was, if you're gonna do copiers, and if toner's always covered, and if the maintenance of those copiers, and it can't be a printer, it has to be a copier, would you get color printers for all the buildings? It's a possibility, because it would be covered, the cost would be covered that we would typically pay out of our general fund.
And one thing that's kind of nice, this district, we really have not engaged in leases. And sometimes districts will lease copiers, lease buses even. You get a little more flexibility, you know, if you maintain things well. Kind of like the difference between renting and owning, you know, we own them. So, you know, as long as they're functioning well and we have this insurance to, you know, to cover maintenance of them and even toner, it makes sense just to not to rush to replace them, so.
And
Do you recoup enough? Like, what's that statistic? What should that statistic?
Yeah, right now, you know, you can see 42% through when that chart was generated in March. We would love to have that number be closer to 80%. But as John has said, you know, first year we've done it, it's not all in there yet.
You know, and maybe we try it a few years and we really look at it and see, you know, and then if we can make, because right now it's 1 year. We don't have any trend, we don't have any, we know that the processes have been worked out and they're being more efficient in the claiming of it.
And the other thing to think about, which I know we talked about with the committee, was this insurance, any kind of liability insurance, this kind of insurance is paid for from our management fund. But when we do get reimbursements, they come into our general fund. So that's very beneficial for a district.
Right.
You know, it's a little bit of cost shifting, I guess you'd say, but it is a benefit to our general fund when we get those checks in.
And the biggest pieces right now are environmental control, so our HVAC systems are covered by this, so at Wilder, I believe, I can't remember the exact, there are close to 200 pumps. And I know that several have gone bad through the years, so they would be changed, that would be something that could be used for this, which is, the HVAC piece is new, relatively new. So we have listed those as, we want those covered.
And it's like any other insurance too. I mean, you kind of hope not to have a big claim too, but if we would have an HVAC go down or some kind of catastrophic failure, yeah, we'd have the hassle of dealing with it, but we would also have this insurance that would help the expense of it.
If you remember 3 or 4 years ago, both children were down at Irving. That was lightning. I think that would still be covered under this. But partially over, but we had it, here we don't have a deductible. We have a $25,000 deductible on those chillers. So when that happened, they used that as 2 different events. So it was $50,000.
Yeah, which I still don't know how they determined that it was 2 separate lightning strikes exactly, but.
Right. So, and each chiller was about, what is 160,000?
That's about right.
So.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. Anything else on those, on facilities?
The last bit, you know, we chatted a little bit on alternates for administrative services building. Bernie brought us some pictures of some potential places. All were rather large. It wasn't like we could find what we wanted. They were towards 40 acres when we were looking for, I think, closer to
8 to 10.
8 to 10. Access was a problem with 1 or 2. 1 it wasn't. real soft. Don't know if people want to sell the ones that were mentioned, and all of that. So still pursuing out here, with the baseball group is, I think, a wise thing for us at the moment.
Okay. Next is the flexibility funds transfer. I'm ready to open a meeting. I have been all night. And it's open. And there's lots of hands up.
Nobody here to speak.
No one here to speak. So anyone here to speak for or against? And there's no one. So we'll go ahead and close the meeting. And next is the resolution, or approval of the resolution. I don't know how to get into it.
Can you roll that back down to me, right there?
Is it this one?
Yes.
Can I just read the recommendation you made?
Yeah.
I made the motion that we approve the board resolution transferring, what is that number?
$268,959.78.
Thank you, Chief. Of unspent, unobligated teacher quality categorical funds for fiscal year 2021 in the flexibility fund per HF 565 and expending those funds for curriculum.
Okay, motion made by Sue. Seconded by Donna. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Next is the policy committee meeting report.
Facilities projects.
You've got a facility projects update as well. Nothing new really, just to let you know, things are moving forward in the auditorium, the gyms. We are still, working on that auxiliary services building site, and that's not all lost time because Envision is able to work on the design, even not knowing where we'll ultimately land. And then Jonna has helped put out and gather names, high school renovation, in terms of putting a list together, a potential community group.
I wondered if I should send that out to, I've sent it to Ken, Ken requested it, but I can send it out to all. I mean, I don't know the next, I mean, I have, it's organic data, so it's if three people named the same person, or three different people named one person, it says that, and it says the reason they accepted, or they added them. So, how do we move this forward?
I would say put together share the list, but put together, a directory basically. Put together contact information and probably.
Well, I think that right now, it's more of selecting the committee, and then what architects said is get 20 names, because you'll maybe get 10 that will say yes.
And I looked at that list, and with the multiples, I can't remember exactly what the number would have been. Do you have many?
I had 80 some on the line.
Okay, okay.
So, and not all of them, many of them are duplicate, but there are some.
You feel good with the list?
So you
Pardon
guys,
me?
You felt good with the list?
Do I feel good with it? I had a red flag on somebody I sent a note in on.
Okay.
It wasn't you. Yeah, it's an interesting list.
I wonder how many times your name's been red flagged.
But are you guys comfortable? Narrowing it down to 20?
We can work on
If
that.
anybody has a red flag they want to say, tell one.
Yeah,
or two.
let's get some more eyes on the names to begin with.
Yeah.
The ones that you guys had multiples of, or is that the ones you probably try to hone in on?
that's the suggestion from the architects, is they said, when you've got several people naming the same people, that would be possibly good.
We have a pretty broad background. Okay. Anything else on this one, facilities project update?
Just the ash trees, which I know Bernie's been looking around, so, yeah.
Okay, next is the policy committee meeting.
Okay, in the policy committee, if you just list them, they can see the titles. I think they're.
Right.
And in going through them, it was Ben and I, and of course Art was there. Essentially, as we did with most of them, there was a lot of cleaning up, combining some when we could. anytime there was that great, long list of things, you know, and Art just go, well, this is just what it says in this regulation. We took it out and just referred to the regulation, because those people should do it. So there was a lot of that. Just kind of brought it up to what we were doing. Art, can you think of anything specific that we should, I mean,
No, I mean, we did, we called out more specifically, succession. You know, it was probably like the only substantive change, and I actually haven't even spoken to Mrs. Duran about this yet. I did touch base with Mrs. Clancy, but where it, in the past, it just said the order will go from district office to to secondary to elementary. Well, short term, if I'm out and we need to know who's in charge, so to speak, the committee had the conversation. Mrs. Clancy oversees directors, has kind of broad knowledge of the district, so maybe she would be first with other administrators consulting with her. Mrs. Duran is licensed as a superintendent and has knowledge of all the buildings and the curriculum side. So we called it out that way, and we just said other administrators would communicate with
a
them.
lot of it because of response to emergency plans, when you need something right now. With the advent of cell phones and everything else, most of the things we had to worry about in the past, we don't. But somebody does have to be distinguished, whatever we want that way.
And then if it were longer term, the board would get together anyway, to decide, were you gonna have an interim superintendent?
Yeah.
Somebody on staff would Mrs. Duran be an acting superintendent, that kind of thing. So that was probably the one we talked about the most.
Yeah.
So,
if nobody has any questions, I'll move approval of the first reading of all of those policies.
We have a,
Revision.
yes. Is it the?
yep, and then we'll,
And then the second reading of the
second
others.
reading of some
Okay.
others, yep.
So Ken made the motion to approve the first reading of those, seconded by Donna.
Yep.
Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
And
There
you
we
see the ones for second reading?
I think they're on the next one, under board policies.
Yep, under B there, yep.
Okay. We went, nothing has come forward since the first reading to change that. So I'll move approval of the second reading of those listed.
Okay. Motion made by Ken,
I'll second.
seconded by Sue. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Fourth quarter discipline, mental health, and SRO reports.
Yep, we can take them in that order. The discipline report, one thing probably jumped out at you, and I think it is a data entry error, and I would have to try to go find where it was, but where you see duration assigned, we didn't have any 12-day suspension for disruption. So if you look down about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, the 10th box down, that's a data entry error.
It just says 2 on it.
Oh, it does say 2, okay. Okay, good. That must have got it cleared up then, because I had 12 on my copy, and, okay. Good. I just about created confusion where it didn't need to be, sorry. But that column is that duration column. This is just for in-school or out-of-school suspensions. And I think I was gonna mention the zeros there. I can only assume that they had some office time. They processed that with the principal, and they entered it as a suspension, but it didn't end up being, a very long length of time. And,
So,
go ahead.
when they have in-school suspension, then does that become a one-on-one? Like, do we pull associates to sit with them, or how does this?
No, I mean, we have an in-school suspension room. Now, if it were a student who has associate support, or if a student were escalated, there would be an adult right there in that area, typically right outside the door, is how that would normally work. So, if that were a high school situation, part of the remodel several years ago was adding a couple of in-school suspension rooms right there, right outside the administrator's offices.
Gotcha. Okay.
So you'd have an adult there too. And in the middle school, it was already that way.
Do you remember the date when we returned to full day?
February 15th, I think.
Okay. Well, I said that I did end up talking for another reason to the assistant principal of middle school. I said, how's your year? He said, well, up till that date, we had a great year. But then as soon as we brought everybody back, well, everything went bananas. And as I read the reports, it did.
There was definitely an increase in student behaviors when the day went back full length. Middle school for sure. I heard the same thing from an elementary principal.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
We worked on an interesting twist of that. We looked at some things at one of the elementaries and found that with some of the early lunches, the behaviors fell like around 1 or 2. And so we thought it was more of just like being hungry because they were eating at 10:45 in the morning, 11 o'clock. So we started doing some like school-wide snacks with one of the elementaries that had reached out that also has a food pantry. And it was interesting to see them say that some of the numbers went down, the behaviors calmed down. So,
and if you
Kids
recall,
don't eat very much for lunch, so maybe they are really hungry by, because, you know.
or some do eat at, I mean, my daughter eats at 10:50.
Yeah.
if you recall the earlier quarter reports, they were very few. This still is, compared to other years, this is good. And I know like at the high school, for example, not that attendance and discipline always go hand in hand, but often at the high school, if we get to 95% average daily attendance, we feel good about that. They were over 96%. So, it was a very smooth year in terms of discipline, and you as board members, you didn't deal with any expulsions, and that which is great, but historically we have had some of those to deal with. So, yep. So I feel good about the report, but as Ken said, there definitely was a spike. The next report in there is a kind of year-end school-based mental health services report for you. Credit to all the people working on this, to Sue, to the AEA that's given us really good support, to the local providers we're working with, to our counselors. The goal is to have a comprehensive mental health system, meaning we're really looking at a wide range of services for kids. We're trying to have good data. We're trying to make sure we don't have waiting lists for kids who need mental health support. We're doing it on site instead of making them go out and find it somewhere. I really appreciate that the board had this as a goal 2 years in a row, and that we were able to get those contracts in place and provide some funding. You don't like to see that we had 154 kids, getting professional counseling on site this year, but I'm glad we could serve them if they needed it. 30 of them, would have been considered a crisis and had follow-up, not just this kid needs somebody to talk to, but there's a serious situation there. 61 students, this was a new thing they began tracking, were identified for adverse childhood experiences. This was done through conversation with the counselor. They could identify. I think we're going to look at how we're tracking that. Something I appreciate too was, and we talked about each of these things with each of the 3 providers this spring. We met with them in late May. We do want to look at transitions for students, because we have multiple providers, which is good because they have capacity. They help us make sure we're getting everybody served. But we have different providers in different buildings. So those kids, say there's a 5th grader who maybe received some pretty intense counseling, the decision to be made is, now they're in middle school, so they have a new counselor, or do we try to find a way to let them stay with that counselor where they have the relationship? And as we talked with all 3 providers, the answer was really, it's going to be case by case. These counselors know their clients. They know, could they be successful moving to another counselor? Is it really important that I stay in touch with them all summer and then stay with them next fall? So that's something, another nice thing, 3 different providers, but they're all working well together. You know, the second bullet there, there's always some difficulty in finding the perfect location, you know, a dedicated space for counselors. We have good facilities, but for example, one thing that came up was in one of our buildings, they were using a music practice room, which was fine, except when the band kicks up. If you happen to have an appointment during that, then there was some noise, things like that. And just again, making sure we have comfortable, one of the elementaries, one of the rooms, they had like a student chair in there. You know, rather, we can find them an adult chair. That's the kind of thing, you know, we ask at the end of the year, you know, what do we need to do? Tell us anything, any concerns you have. So wanted to capture that. And then we've got goals there. We want to do some program assessment. This school's teaming best practices scoring. We want the people in those collaborative groups, our school counselors, AEA folks, administrators, and therapists, to all assess how we're doing and score it, so we see where we can get better. Continue to try to, we have a document I saw, this Comprehensive Mental Health Supports and Roles. We're trying to look at everybody on that team and see what are their areas of special training or strength, and capture that so we know. Just trying to continue to improve our intentionality is what it comes down to. And I think we have gone forward by leaps and bounds this last year in how we're serving kids there, but we want to keep doing a good job. So I don't know, Sue, anything you want to add to that?
No, it's interesting on the ACEs for the adverse childhood experiences. It really is a lot of training right now on like trauma-informed care, on how can we help our students work through their trauma without bringing up their past trauma, right? Or putting them back in that state. So that is really, it's kind of a statewide initiative right now of educating all the people on really trauma-informed care. And so to see that the number is that high is, I think, probably normal, but making sure that we're addressing that.
And the approach that when we first interviewed these providers, we talked about cognitive-based therapy, CBT, and that speaks to what Sue's talking about, trying to get those kids to be able to think about and talk about the things that really have triggered, you know, that have caused this trauma, and how can they process it and hopefully get to the point where they can kind of deal with it and move on. Like you said, instead of always just going back to that trauma and having, you know, every time there's any other stressor, having a meltdown. So, you know, really trying to build skills for kids.
Yeah, and I know just one other thing, in some of the contracts, we did up one of our providers to 2 days a week at an elementary because she had the need for that. And so I think we're set. If we continue to see these numbers climb, I think we have ourselves in a really good position to continue to support the programs and stuff.
Definitely the goal. We pretty much got through the whole year without a waiting list. I think the demand got pretty high at the middle school at the end of the year, and one of our other providers that wasn't in the middle school gave a little support. So,
From a little different dimension, Wednesday I'm with the Legislative Review Planning Committee of the Iowa Association of School Boards, and I'll still be pushing mental health as number one. But if you can think of anything specific that you want us to throw in there tomorrow, I mean, I'll mention it Wednesday.
and that'll be on our July agenda for the board to kind of officially adopt their legislative priorities too. So maybe there may be some things you hear that inform that. So. The last report in there is the SRO report that he gives me quarterly, and we've talked about this before. You know, these are kind of all of his calls, so some of these would be not in the school building, different times. Probably if you look down call type, you know, some interesting things you can see here and there. I know that our SRO has been on, he's either just back from or still on vacation, so he didn't make it here tonight, but I can definitely have him in to speak to you and update you again. I think it's been really positive. The person we have in there is very good with kids, very responsive. There have been multiple times it's been helpful to have somebody right on site. And I think from the city perspective, it does help that they're not pulling an officer off a beat to come answer a call.
When we talked about being alerted through the computer if our kids are hitting words about suicide or whatever, does that show up in this report too, as some of those suicide, or no, does that not show up in this report?
It's a good question. I think it very well could, because the chance that if we had somebody in crisis, or if we did a well check, for example, which would be common, then it would.
Okay.
And I think Officer Hackett he works pretty closely with our multi-tiered system of support, our MTSS plan, our at-risk folks. He's pretty frequently called in. It wouldn't always just be if there's some kind of a tobacco violation or something. So I think there's a likelihood it could show up in there.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. We'll move on to the board calendar. There will be no finance tomorrow. Is there technology this month? Does anybody
That
know?
looks like that's next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow.
Will not be around July 1st.
Pardon me?
July 1st. It will not be around.
Oh, maybe we'll just change.
Well, I don't think you can really handle it without these. Probably should.
Not the same, Ben's pretty.
Originally, I think there was going to be, and then the vacation got adjusted.
Okay.
But I don't know if that
Okay.
adjustment is sticking or not sticking, so.
Okay, that's fine. Sounds good.
I think you can expect if you're on that committee, you can expect some communication from Mr. Coffey. He'll reach out.
Sounds good. Next regular meeting will be July 19th, followed by a closed door meeting, since we couldn't have it tonight.
I'm coming home from Colorado that day for a wedding, so I'll try and be here, but I
Oh, that's
cannot
right.
promise I'll be.
Or maybe we can find a day when everybody, we'll see.
That's fine, yeah, we can have a special meeting for
Yeah, just
that.
that.
I think I'll be back.
I'll be flexible with you.
If I'm not, I'll text you. I'll text.
Yeah, you can just let me
Yes,
know.
okay, yeah, okay.
Then the next board agenda.
Yeah, and that's I know those are tentative. They just kind of get moved over year to year, so those do change, those tentative agendas. But like, for example, issuance of teacher leader contracts. Okay, well, we had that this meeting,
Right.
so we won't do that again next meeting.
Food service meal prices.
Well, okay, there's a reason to do that.
Okay.
Because part of that is we have adult prices in there, and so adults would still pay. But we're unique because there's about 3 districts that have year-round schools, and they don't think that they need to get that information to us, especially not, they don't wait, they do it mid-July. So we've always called, and Abby has called and said, we need that calculation, or give us the information so we can make the calculation to set up our adult prices. Right now, we're holding the same until we know. We had them on for today, but they didn't have the information, so. So it does look odd, yes, because.
Move adjourned.
Motion made by Ken to adjourn,
Second.
seconded by Sue, almost by Donna. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.